Oh my god, I just bled through my white jeans. This is so embarrassing. What if someone sees? I need to change out of these pants now. Most of our horror stories would start this way when we get our first period, and it's something that every girl goes through. But for me, I never got my period, and never will, because I'm incomplete. It was during biology class when it struck me as odd that I still hadn't gotten my period. My mom tried to reassure me and said that I was a late bloomer and that I shouldn't worry too much because she also started late. You see, my mom had a condition called an imperforate hymen, which prevented her periods from freely flowing. She ended up having surgery, but while her problem was easily fixed, mine wasn't. I grew anxious about hearing other people's period stories and not getting mine. I begged my mom to get checked until she agreed to take me. That weekend, we went to see a gynecologist, but his results came back inconclusive. So I had to do an ultrasound on a full bladder to help make the uterus more visible. After 45 minutes of me being in immense pain and 3 different people trying to push and probe around on a very full bladder, they came to the conclusion that this issue was out of their hands, and I was referred to a specialist in women and children's reproductive health in a city 2 hours away. By this point, I could see that my mom was also starting to get worried, but she tried to hide it. I was so afraid something was wrong with me, and worse, no one would give me an answer. Instead, I was forced to have another pelvic exam, and now an MRI. After they were done, they said the results would come in a week, and to come back up so we could discuss the results. It was like no one cared. They all said it so nonchalantly, stating that I had to schedule more diagnostic procedures to figure out if anything was even wrong. I couldn't sleep for days, wondering what was so wrong with me. I sat in the examination room with my mom when the doctor appeared through the door. It was the first time I ever saw a medical professional so stunned, and instead of looking at me, he said to my mom, Ma'am, look, it seems as though..." He never went past those words and told my mom that he'd bring in a colleague for a second opinion. Why would no one tell me what was wrong? Was I really that unfixable? Every second that passed made me feel like I was some circus animal to be awed and examined. Suddenly, both doctors came in, but this time she looked straight at me. "I'm sorry to say this, but you are missing your reproductive organs. They are completely missing." That day, I found out I had a condition called Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome, which is the absence of a uterus at birth. It is a developmental anomaly where during growth in the womb, the uterus does not develop. There are 2 types of this condition. Type 1 is where the uterus is missing as well as the cervix and a majority of the canal. And then there is type 2, where other organs are also affected, like the kidneys, ureters, and ovaries. Sometimes there can also be pieces of the non-functional uterus called uterine remnants or uterine horns that have to be surgically removed because they cause immense pain. I had type 1, where there was no visible risk to any surrounding organs. Still, I was a teenager and only 16 years old when I learned all of this. And that day, I wasn't a kid. I was now an adult. If I wanted to have an intimate relationship with my future partner, I would need an artificially created canal that could be done either surgically or through dilation. Dilation meant stretching the skin down there over 3 to 6 months in hopes that a hole would be created. In both cases, I need to constantly stretch the hole. The entire time, all I could think of was being normal. All I wanted to be was normal. So right away, I said, "Surgically!" And the doctor paused and responded with one word, "But..." And then she continued to tell me the news that showed me how the world really worked. That in the United States, these procedures were considered cosmetic surgery, meaning that it wouldn't be covered by my insurance. I couldn't understand why. Even though I wasn't in any medical danger, I was still missing an organ from my body, one that every female should be born with. And now my medical insurance company was telling me that it didn't fall under a medical condition? No matter how much I begged the doctor for help, I knew she couldn't do anything. And when I looked at my mom, begging her with my eyes to say yes for her daughter, I knew there was no way we could ever afford it without falling into debt. So, I made my adult decision, the only one I could make, and agreed to my only option, dilation. When we left, my mom held my hand and tried to reassure me in the car that everything would be fine. I knew deep inside that she was really speaking to herself, feeling like a failed parent, so I never asked and never brought it up again. I imagine any parent would want the best for their child, even if it was some cosmetic surgery to make their daughter normal. But we just didn't have the money, and I couldn't bring myself to put her in that situation. It was the longest ride home I ever had, and the entire time I held my tears back, telling myself that life sometimes draws you a bad hand, and this was just one of those times. I lived the next few years with shame and a secret too embarrassing to tell anyone other than my family. I was afraid people would judge me and ask questions that I wouldn't be able to answer. I was ashamed to date because I didn't have a normal body like everyone else and didn't know how they'd react. While everyone else had their first period story, I have mine. The story of when I found out that I would never be able to have my own child. Health insurance companies refused to cover my medical condition because they saw it as a cosmetic issue. What they forgot was how it affects people like me mentally. Mentally, we feel as if we are incomplete. Mentally, we make ourselves believe that we are unfixable. And mentally, we drag ourselves down feeling inadequate and less of a woman because it says so on our medical records. They forget that this drives down our overall health and goes beyond cosmetics. We just get told to deal with it and adopt if we really want a kid, but the reality is that it isn't a solution. I've realized that sometimes life can be unfair, but it is how we learn to deal with life's obstacles that make us stronger. While I can't say 100% that I'm okay with my condition, I feel lucky to have such a loving partner who understands me and still loves me through everything. I also understand that I don't need to have kids to be a successful person. Life is about finding your own way, and hopefully one day, there will be more awareness on what it is like to be born as a woman and not have a uterus.